The day the real heiress came home, my family, who had been living comfortably because of me, told me the truth. My dad's kidney failure was fake. He just wanted me to donate a kidney for the real heiress to use as a specimen. My mom's leukemia was fake too. She just wanted my bone marrow to feed their dog. And my brother's car accident, the one that supposedly hurt his heart and needed mine, that was fake too. They said I'd taken the real heiress's place. And this was what I owed her. They thought I'd cry and throw a fit. I thought about my artificial heart and said with a sigh, but I've drained almost all your lifespan. Without my flesh and blood, you won't last more than half a month. When my folks called, I went straight to the hospital to donate my heart without a second thought. The doctor double-checked with me. You're Daisy Song, right? You're sure you want to donate your heart? The doctor asked. Even with an artificial heart, it'll still impact your body. I suggest you really think it over before deciding. Meanwhile, my mom and dad were beside themselves with worry. I didn't hesitate, just nodded and said donate. Then I quietly reassured my folks, don't cry. I'm not going to die. They each grabbed one of my hands. Don't worry, Daisy, they said. With your dad and me here, nothing bad will happen to you. But I really wasn't going to be in any danger. I'm actually a mythical creature who's been cultivating for 1,000 years. I came down from the mountains because I'm close to achieving enlightenment and needed to accumulate good karma. Donating a heart was a great opportunity to earn some serious good karma. Besides, I can't die, and my organs can regenerate. After I signed the papers, I was wheeled into the operating room. Anesthetics don't really affect me. My body pretended to close its eyes, but my soul floated out and watched as my chest was cut open, and my heart was removed while I was still alive. The doctors were chatting. First time seeing siblings so close, one said. Willing to donate her heart to her brother and get an artificial one herself. But where's the brother? Our hospital hasn't admitted a patient like that, another replied. I don't know, the family just asked us to remove the heart and give it to them. Someone else chimed in. The surgery finally finished an hour later. I could actually feel my good karma skyrocketing. But when I was wheeled out, the waiting room outside the operating room was empty. When I woke up, my seriously injured brother, Tom, was standing right in front of me, perfectly fine. With them was a stranger. She was the birth daughter who'd been sold for $30,000 because they were poor, and then they'd spared no expense to find her once they had money. The most important good karma was secured, so I didn't care about the details. This family's self-healing ability seemed pretty strong. Last month, my dad had kidney failure surgery, and he was up and about just 3 days later. My mom had leukemia and needed a bone marrow transplant. She was walking around perfectly fine just half a day after her surgery. Used to it by now, I sat up, clutching my chest. Mom, Dad, when are we going home? I asked. My parents exchanged glances, a flicker of suspicion in their eyes. How did she recover so fast? My mom whispered. She's always been strong, hasn't she? This isn't the first time, my dad replied, trying to convince himself. I sat quietly by the bed. But another unfriendly gaze was hard to ignore. The strange girl stared at me, like she was looking at her prey. Is something wrong? I asked directly. That's when my parents finally introduced her. Oh right, let me introduce you, my mom said. This is our biological daughter, Jane. We just found her a while ago. And from today on, she'll be living with us. I nodded. Of course. Welcome home. After all, this family had used their future good fortune to find their birth daughter. That was a significant amount of good karma, so I certainly had to welcome her. Jane's eyes were red, like she wanted to say something, but my parents stopped her. We'll talk about it when we get home. I wondered what it could be. But as soon as we got home, the four of them sat neatly on the couch, scrutinizing me. Daisy, my brother Tom said. You're truly naive if you still haven't figured it out. He patted his firm chest. To be honest, I was never in a car accident, and I certainly don't need a heart. I looked at him confused. My good karma was secure, so I was finally a little curious about their charade. I played along, acting shocked. Huh? Why? I asked. Tom, where did my heart go? Jane's eyes lit up, and she stood up abruptly. Your heart? Sister, wait, I'll get it for you. Jane had a cruel smile on her face as she brought a plate from the kitchen. Look, big sis, this is your heart. Even though a mythical creature's organs can regenerate. Wasn't it Tom who egged Mom and Dad on to sell Jane for toys back then? Humans are really complex. Once they got rich, they suddenly became willing to do whatever their sister wanted. I looked at the Song family. They showed no guilt whatsoever. Instead, they watched their biological daughter with admiration. Didn't you say Tom was in a car accident? I asked. Jane's smile widened. Sorry, sis. I've been researching the differences between humans and pigs lately, and I really wanted to see the difference between a human heart and a pig's heart. Mom, Dad, and Tom all teamed up to trick you to fulfill my wish. She held the plate with the heart closer to me. But look at these two. Which heart do you think is fresher? I see, I said, frowning in disgust. If I wasn't a mythical creature, this family probably would have ruined me by now. Seeing my silence, Tom, with a cold expression, stepped forward and shielded his biological sister behind him. Let me tell you, this heart is your compensation to Jane, he declared. You've lived in this house for 7 or 8 years, enjoying a rich kid's life, taking Jane's place. Now that she's back, you should pay some restitution. I nodded calmly and continued. Then what about my bone marrow and kidney? My parents remained silent, but Jane still smiled and said, The bone marrow? I glanced at it, and then dumped it down the drain. As for your kidney, I suddenly got interested in specimens that day, so I made it into one. After she finished, the 4 of them looked at me expectantly. They seemed to want to see me break down and go crazy, to see me realize my sincerity had been mocked. But I just smiled. So that's how it is, I said. But without my flesh and blood to support you, you probably won't live much longer. Half a month at most. At my words, the house erupted in laughter. Ha ha ha, Daisy Song, we were never sick. Those were all lies to trick you. How could we only live for half a month? My dad scoffed. Our family is considered wealthy, and you got to be a rich socialite for free. Since you enjoyed someone else's life, you should pay the price. We won't kick you out, you can stay here and atone for Jane. I lowered my gaze, silent. They were right, enjoying things that don't belong to you does come with a price. But they seem to have forgotten that 7 years ago, when they adopted me, they made a deal with me personally. They'd rather be successful and die young than live a lifetime in poverty. That's why they became wealthy. But they only had 7 days left to live. I just thought living in this house wasn't bad, and for the sake of good karma, I decided to use my flesh and blood to extend their lives. Too bad they didn't seem to need it. Jane officially returned to the Song family and began acting like a pampered princess. One morning at breakfast, as I was about to sit down, she suddenly moved her chair closer to her. Sister, I want to eat. Can you help me serve myself first? You can eat after I finish, okay? She asked. The Song family silently approved, as if they really saw me as a maid. Sure, I said. Without a change in expression, I ladled out a bowl of soup, but I bypassed Jane's outstretched hand. Then I poured the entire bowl over her head. Ah! Jane shrieked, jumping up, her scalp red from the heat. The Song family's eyes widened, and they all stood up. Daisy Song, are you out of your mind? My mom yelled. You dare to bully someone like this right in front of us? What do you do behind our backs? My mom was so furious she raised her hand to slap me. But before her hand could land, her nose started dripping blood, splashing onto the floor like red flowers. Mom, why are you bleeding from your nose? It's all because of this little witch, Tom exclaimed. Meanwhile, my dad's phone suddenly rang. Mr. Song, something's happened at the company, please come quickly. One mishap after another left the Song family with no time to worry about Jane's injured scalp. Company trouble was already stressful, and Jane was crying and screaming from the pain. Soon the Song family lost patience. My dad was the first to roar, "All right, stop howling. You're bringing bad luck first thing in the morning, making this house a mess. If anything happens to the company, everything's over." Jane's crying stopped for a moment. Dad, you actually yelled at me. She was the one who did it. This time, my dad didn't say anything. He just quickly put on his clothes and stormed out, slamming the door. Compared to family, he valued profit more. My mom's nosebleed wouldn't stop. What's going on? Why won't it stop? She cried. "Mom, let me take you to the hospital, let's go." Tom grabbed the car keys and pulled my mom outside, leaving Jane unattended for a moment. She clutched her scalp, staring dumbfounded as everyone left one by one. Finally, she unleashed all her anger on me. "Daisy Song, get on your knees and apologize to me right now," she screamed. My eyes narrowed slightly, a dangerous glint appearing in them. In all my thousands of years, no one had ever made me kneel and apologize. "What did you say?" I asked. She cautiously took half a step back but still yelled, neck craned, "You're the one who hurt me. Look, my hair comes off in clumps when I touch it. Shouldn't you apologize?" A stray who doesn't even know who her parents are, enjoying a life of luxury in my house, should know how to be grateful. "I know, you're just afraid that now that I'm back, Mom and Dad won't love you anymore, right? Let me tell you, Daisy Song, I came back to kick you out." I looked at the bright red blood on the floor and curved my lips into a smile. "You don't need to kick me out," I said. "This house won't last much longer anyway." Jane's eyes flashed with displeasure. "How dare you curse our family?" I looked into her eyes and spoke softly. "Don't you feel it? The Song family's luck is running out. 7 years ago, on a winter night, people rushed past me constantly. Only the Song family stopped and called me into their car. After learning I was an orphan, they decided to adopt me. They said seeing me was like seeing their lost daughter. In return, I decided to help this family. I initially wanted to help them go from poverty to a comfortable life, but these people were not satisfied. Greed flickered in the eyes of all three of them. Comfortable? Who cares about comfortable? My dad scoffed. We want to be rich and live a life above others. The family sat in their minivan, fantasizing about the future, but I frowned. For their kindness in adopting me, I could help them reach a comfortable level. But great wealth would come at a price. Your good fortune won't support great wealth, I explained, unless you trade your lifespan. Are you truly willing? Unexpectedly, all three nodded in unison. You only live once anyway, so of course you want to live a spectacular life. My dad exclaimed, "Dying young is fine, you'll just reincarnate sooner." As soon as they said these words, the agreement was sealed. Over the past 7 years, the Song family went from being dirt poor to one of the most prominent families in high society. They had already enjoyed everything they could, and the price was exchanging their remaining lifespan. Each time the Song family told me they were sick, I felt a pang of pity and wanted to use my flesh and blood to give them a normal lifespan. But they seemed to have forgotten their bargain. So the price came calling. Being human, the biggest taboo is forgetting your roots. As soon as my mom came home, Jane eagerly rushed to her. "Mom, what did the doctor say? Why did your nose suddenly start bleeding and wouldn't stop?" she asked. My mom patted her hand, signaling reassurance. "They couldn't find anything wrong," she said. "But how's your head? Oh dear, you're bald in such a large spot." At her words, the family turned to me, fuming. Tom took 2 steps towards me. "Daisy Song, how could you be so heavy-handed? Jane is a girl, and she's got a bald spot. How will she go out now?" I gave him a cold look and put my hand to my chest. "So hair is more important than a heart, huh?" A flicker of unnaturalness crossed Tom's face. "Regardless, you shouldn't have done that," he insisted. "You need to understand that Jane is our biological daughter. You've enjoyed her good life for so long, and you owe her this. It's wrong to hold a grudge." I was about to speak when the front door opened again. My dad returned, his face ashen, and the whole family's hearts sank. "Dad, what happened with the company? Is it serious?" Tom asked. My dad rubbed his temples and sat on the couch. "There are some issues with the company's accounts, and it's currently under investigation," he explained. "All of you, behave yourselves and don't cause any trouble. This is a critical time." Involving major company matters, everyone quieted down. The family sat there, murmuring to themselves. How could the company be investigated out of nowhere? "Dad, did we offend someone?" Tom wondered. The family guessed all around but couldn't get it right. My dad even took 2 bottles of expensive liquor from home to go visit someone. Little did they know the person they should have been trying to appease was me. I silently checked the calendar. 5 days left until it all ended. For the next 2 days, the Song family was always worried. But Jane had just returned, and she hadn't gotten over her rich kid addiction. She started spending huge amounts of money, buying designer clothes and luxury goods. As the atmosphere in the house was tense, a loud bang suddenly came from the study. "Where's Jane? Does she just want to bankrupt this family quickly or something?" My dad roared. Tom came out of his room when he heard the noise. "Dad, our family isn't that bad yet," he said. "Jane just got back, and her expenses are definitely high. Let her spend a bit. It's true she's been through a lot these past years." What he said wasn't wrong, but my dad's face turned red with anger. "Spending a bit is fine, but she maxed out my credit card," he shouted. "What?" Tom's eyes widened, and he immediately called Jane back. Watching the luxury store employees carry in things one after another, my parents' faces were pale with anger, unable to speak. As soon as Jane entered the house, my dad roared, "Go return all these things right now." Jane froze for a moment. Then her eyes immediately welled up with tears, clearly upset. "Mom, Dad, what are you doing?" she cried. "I've seen Daisy Song's closet. It's full of designer brands. I'm your biological daughter. What's wrong with buying some clothes? Don't be so obviously biased." My mom sighed. "Jane, times have changed. You need to consider our current financial situation when you spend money." Jane burst into tears, then glared at me resentfully. "It's all your fault. You got to enjoy all of this instead of me," she wailed. "I don't care. I want to spend money too. I want to live like a rich socialite, or I'll just die." Another one wanting to make a deal? I was interested. "Are you willing to have all your future wealth concentrated and spent now?" I asked. Jane impatiently waved her hand. "I'm willing, why wouldn't I be? I'll worry about the future later. What do I care? Life is short, I want to live in the moment." After hearing her words, my dark pupils turned red for a moment. Jane herself was willing. As soon as the deal was made, my dad received a call. "Mr. Song, there's been a breakthrough with the company's issues. You don't need to rush anymore." Everyone let out a huge sigh of relief, and my dad waved his hand and said, forget it. You bought them. Just be more mindful of the situation when you spend money in the future." Jane was ecstatic, unaware that her life had also been predetermined. 3 days left. Jane's highlight reel, along with the Song family, would soon come to an end. Ever since I was scolded last time, I found Jane more and more irritating. She started trying everything to drive me out of the house. After several failed attempts, she resorted to framing me, but her intelligence was truly lacking. "Dad, Mom, come quick, I can't take it anymore," boo-hoo, Jane wailed. The whole family rushed to her bedroom immediately. Driven by curiosity, I followed to take a look. But when I saw all her designer clothes in the closet shredded, I couldn't help but laugh. The Song family didn't have much money left for her to squander. Jane had just cut off her only escape route. What happened here?" My mom cried. "She only bought these a few days ago. This whole closet of clothes adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. How did this happen?" Jane was sobbing uncontrollably, and then she pointed at me. My dad raised his hand to hit me, but I quickly grabbed his wrist. "Dad, it's not too late to figure things out before you act," I said. While holding his wrist, I secretly checked his pulse and body. Late-stage kidney failure, and it seemed he was already starting to swell all over. Jane's ruined clothes were thrown in front of me. "See for yourself, just look," she shrieked. "These were bought with a lot of money. If you didn't like me, you could have just said so. Why ruin Mom and Dad's hard-earned money? Today it's cutting clothes. Is tomorrow you're going to lay hands on Mom and Dad?" She wasn't stupid, she knew how to shift the blame to my parents. My mom was furious when she heard this, and immediately pulled Jane into her arms to protect her. "Daisy Song, I'm truly disappointed in you," she said. "We kept you to take care of our daughter, not for you to compete with her for affection and family resources. Leave, get out of our house. We don't welcome you." My heart remained calm. 1,000 years as a mythical creature. 7 or 8 years are but a blink of an eye to me. But leaving after being framed is not my style. Even if I could just kill them, they weren't worth getting karma for. Meeting Jane's smug gaze, I simply picked up my phone. "I can leave," I said, "but I didn't ruin these clothes. Let's call the police first to sort this out. The police will know whose fingerprints are on them once they examine them." Jane tried to stop me, but it was too late. Her face turned pale, and my mom held her, comforting her. "Don't be scared, it's okay," my mom said. "The truth will come out soon, and then we'll see how she tries to argue. We're already tight on money lately. Buying these things for you was already a stretch, and we swallowed our heartache to fulfill your wish, only for her to destroy them. That's just not right." The whole family was furious, so much so that no one noticed Jane's face getting paler with each word my mom spoke. When the police arrived, my parents were still very angry. "Officer, these are things we just bought a few days ago, and they're very expensive," my dad explained. "If it turns out she really did it, can we demand she goes to jail?" The police officer nodded. "Yes, if it meets a certain conviction amount, it's possible." I smiled, eager to have my fingerprints taken. After they were done, I looked at Jane. "To be fair, shouldn't you also have yours taken?" I asked. Jane held her ground. "Nonsense. These are my clothes. Of course my fingerprints are on them." She blurted out. "Maybe you were wearing gloves when you did it, to avoid leaving evidence." I didn't say anything, just quietly scanned the room. Finally, my gaze settled under the sofa. Jane hadn't even managed to get rid of the scissors she used to cut the clothes. Sure enough, as soon as I approached the sofa, Jane nervously blocked me. "What are you doing? This is my room," she snapped. I couldn't be bothered with her nonsense, so I turned to the police instead. "Officer, I suspect the weapon is in here," I said. "You're full of it." Jane's reaction was extreme, which only heightened the police's suspicion. When the scissors were found under the sofa, they indeed had many fingerprints on them. We all went to the police station. During this time, Tom kept mocking me. "See, a biological sister is always better," he sneered. "People with unclear backgrounds don't understand what kind of inferior genes they have. Our family raising a thief, it's truly a misfortune. Destroying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff just like that. Who knows how much more you've ruined in our house." One false accusation after another was piled on me. Even though I was too lazy to argue with them, I couldn't help but speak up now. "Is the case closed?" I asked. Tom froze for a moment. "What?" he asked. I patiently repeated myself. I said, "Officer, is the case closed? If it's not closed, you're making baseless accusations, and spreading rumors carries legal responsibility." Tom laughed, looking at me with an absurd expression. "If it wasn't you, who else could it be?" he scoffed. "Are you trying to say my sister destroyed those things herself and framed you? She knows the current situation of our family. She wouldn't do something so stupid." Jane subtly tugged at Tom's sleeve. "Brother, stop talking," she whispered. Tom misunderstood, thinking his sister was being kind and wanted to save me some face. "Don't worry, Jane," he said. "Today, we'll definitely get justice for you." Daisy song, "Do you dare to make a bet with me? If you lose, you'll willingly go to jail." I smiled slightly and agreed without hesitation. "And what if you lose?" I asked. Tom was full of confidence. "Heh, whatever you want," he replied. Beside us, Jane was on the verge of going crazy, her lower lip almost bleeding from being bitten. "Brother, don't bet with her. Let's just withdraw the case, okay?" she pleaded. "It's not worth it for something like this." "Brother," she begged again. My lips involuntarily curled upward. I tapped his heart with my fingertip, then pointed to his head. "Anyway, it's useless to keep, so it might as well have been lost in that car accident along with your heart." During the half-hour wait for the results, Jane was incredibly anxious. She came up with countless excuses to withdraw the case. But unfortunately, I was the one who called the police, so she didn't have that right. Half an hour later, the police's fingerprint comparison results were out. "Officer, what's the verdict?" my dad asked. "Did this ungrateful adopted daughter cut up my daughter's clothes? We don't want compensation, and we won't accept a settlement. We just want her to go to jail." The police officer looked at me, then at Jane, who was huddled like a quail behind her family. "There were a lot of fabric remnants on the scissors," he explained. "After repeated comparisons, we can confirm this was the weapon used. But unfortunately, we did not find Daisy Song's fingerprints on the scissors." Everyone frowned deeply. "How can that be?" my mom asked. Jane seized the opportunity to speak up. Maybe she was wearing gloves when she did it, she suggested. She was the one who called the police and asked for fingerprints to be taken too. I chuckled. You really know how to turn the tables, don't you? The police officer's gaze towards Jane also grew colder. But Ms. Jane, the officer continued, we found a large number of your fingerprints on those scissors. Jane seemed to have anticipated this and immediately said, those are my things, so it's normal for my fingerprints to be on them. I use them every day, and if they're worn out from use, that's my choice. What does it have to do with you? The police officer sneered and directly presented the receipt as evidence. How you use them is indeed none of our business, he stated. But the delivery receipt shows that the scissors were just bought an hour ago. Both the fingerprints and the fabric scraps point to you. Miss Jane, you're crying wolf, aren't you? What? The Song family was dumbfounded in shock. My dad pointed at her, his fingertip trembling uncontrollably. You wanted to kick her out. You could have just told us directly. He stammered. Why ruin things for no reason? You should know our company is having problems right now. These things were just bought a few days ago, and you just destroyed them. I watched calmly. So, why were you deliberately targeting me? I asked. Logically, when Mom, Dad, and Tom were sick, I donated everything I could. 3 lives, even if they didn't need me to save them, I still did. In your human minds, I should owe you nothing anymore. Why did you have to ruin your own good fortune? Perhaps because I brought up their sickness and my help. The family suddenly looked at me with a hint of guilt. Jane stammered for a long time. At first, she denied it, but then, seeing that no one believed her, she simply gave up. Yes, I ruined them myself, so what? She burst out. This is my house. Why should an adopted daughter be able to boss me around? All of you are taking her side now. My dad was so angry he could barely squeeze out a few words through gritted teeth. We're mad that you wasted money. As soon as he finished speaking, my dad suddenly swayed, stumbled back 2 steps, and fainted. Dad, are you okay? Tom cried. Dad. I calculated the time. Oh, only 2 days left. The initial stage of their illnesses was over, and their respective problems were about to erupt. My dad was sent to the emergency room by the police. After a series of examinations, the doctor's face looked very grim. The doctor called the family outside, and my mom's eyes were red with worry. Doctor, is it very serious? What kind of illness is it? She asked. The doctor pushed up his glasses. The patient has widespread swelling, he explained. All the test results are very poor. We can essentially confirm it's acute kidney failure. The Song family stumbled back. Acute kidney failure? My dad stammered. How do we treat it? We'll pay whatever it takes. The doctor sighed. The only current option is a kidney transplant, but kidney sources require waiting, he said. It could be 1 or 2 years, or even 3 to 5 years. However, you have several children. If you're willing, you could have them tested for a match. After the doctor left, everyone's gaze fell on me. I rested my chin in my hand and smiled, gesturing to my right kidney with my eyes. Why are you looking at me? Wasn't my kidney taken by you to make a specimen? I asked. I looked at Jane with a half smile. Now that Dad's body has problems, you, his biological daughter, should step up, shouldn't you? Jane hesitated. My mom was torn between Jane and Tom. Tom, who had been so affectionate towards his sister just days ago, grew anxious. Mom, I'm a man, he argued. If I lose a kidney, how will I live? You don't want me to carry on the family name. My mom wavered at his words. She turned and grabbed Jane's hand. Jane, this is your dad's life, she pleaded. I can only rely on you. Jane looked down, silent, her brows tightly furrowed. Before long, my mom's nose started bleeding again. She instinctively wiped it, but it just kept flowing, smearing her face until it wouldn't stop. What's going on? My mom cried. Doctor, just tell me directly what's happening. I can handle it. The doctor hesitated. Blood cancer, he stated. Commonly known as leukemia, late stage. Those few words were like a bolt of lightning. My mom's body stiffened, and she remained unresponsive until she was admitted to the hospital. With 2 people successively diagnosed, the Song siblings were swamped. I stood by the window, doing some simple things for her, but then I heard my mom murmur, How can it be such a coincidence? She wrapped herself completely in the blanket, her eyes filled with fear. Daisy, do you think this could be retribution? She whispered. Why such a coincidence? Why? This is retribution, my dear mother, I thought. The doctor frowned at the test results. In this situation, it's best to notify the family to do bone marrow matching as soon as possible, he said. Are there any family members willing to be tested for a match? Even though her biological son and daughter were right there, she grabbed my hand first. Her eyes pleaded. Daisy, you've already donated once. Will you donate again for me? I quietly pulled my hand away. Mom, you just said you were going to kick me out of the house, I reminded her. We're not related anymore. How can you ask me to donate bone marrow? Then I looked at Tom and Jane. This is your biological mother. You two can't just stand by and watch her die, can you? The two of them exchanged glances and both fell silent. My parents were placed in the same VIP room. Tom and Jane visited every day, but neither of them brought up donating a kidney or bone marrow. That night, when I returned home, I overheard the siblings plotting. Instead of hurting our own bodies to match them, Tom said, why don't we just take control of the company ourselves? Good point, Jane agreed. We, the younger generation, are the new hope. They're both over 50, with one foot in the grave. There's no point in them living. Just a few hours later, my parents were barely clinging to life in their hospital beds. Seeing the siblings arrive, they both struggled to sit up. My dad tugged at Jane's sleeve. Jane, please save Dad, he begged. Go donate a kidney to Dad. When Dad gets through this, I'll give you shares in the company. My mom clutched Tom's arm, tears streaming down her face. Son, I raised you since you were little, she sobbed. Can you really bear to watch Mom die like this? We're family, there's a chance we'll match. Save me, please save me. Mom will give you the company to inherit, okay? I watched with cold eyes as Tom and Jane exchanged glances. They both pushed their parents' hands away at the same time. Mom, Dad, you should just accept getting old, okay? Tom said. Birth, old age, sickness, and death are a normal part of life. Once you get this illness, you can't escape death. My parents' pupils constricted in shock, clearly not expecting their biological children to say such a thing. But we can still be saved. My dad pleaded. As long as we find a match, there's hope. Jane snorted. Dad, do you know how much it costs to treat your illnesses? She asked. The company is already struggling right now, can't you save some money? I get lectured for buying clothes. Now it's your turn to be sensible, isn't it? My parents' faces turned red with anger. My dad used all his strength to pick up a water cup and threw it at Jane. Animal. He roared. If I had known, I would have just sold you back then instead of bringing you back. Jane's face instantly changed when she heard that. So all these years of suffering were caused by you? She shrieked. Then you deserve to die. This is what you owe me. Jane kicked both my parents, spat, and then left. Tom seemed to recall something, his face turning grim for a moment. Then he also walked away. My parents' hearts raced with anger. The cardiac monitor even showed abnormalities. My dad, for some reason, suddenly seemed to understand. He strained to shout at Tom's retreating back. Your mom's and my fake illnesses have come true. Do you really think you can escape? Tom's steps faltered for a moment. Then he scoffed and left. My parents then looked at me, tears in their eyes. Daisy, my mom whispered. I looked at them expressionlessly. I gave you one of my kidneys. Did you forget? I asked. My bone marrow was dug out by you and fed to a dog. Don't you remember? They both shed tears. My mom even shakily climbed onto the bed and knelt. Daisy, please give me a little more bone marrow, she pleaded. Bone marrow is okay, right? Mom doesn't want to die yet. Mom hasn't lived enough. I smiled, saying meaningfully, I told you already, didn't I? Without my flesh and blood to support you, your lives won't last much longer. I gave you a chance, but you didn't want it yourselves. And also, dying young, wasn't that your own choice? My parents froze, looking bewildered. What do you mean? My mom asked. I kindly helped them recall. When you adopted me back then, you yourselves chose to become rich people. Even if it meant dying young, I reminded them. I helped you go from poverty to your current position. At 56, I even let you live 2 more years. My parents seemed to recall the incident, and fear flickered in their eyes. What? All that was real. My dad stammered. To help them die in peace. I even looked reassuring. Go peacefully, I said. Your son and daughter are not good people, and they won't have a good end either. The car accident that injured his heart, that was his own choice too. Their pupils suddenly dilated. I gently said, go peacefully. Don't expect a next life either. Don't forget. You already exchanged your next life's fortune for the chance to find your biological daughter. My connection with you all also ends here. I walked out of the ward, and as I reached the door, the heart monitor began beeping loudly. Patients in beds 36 and 37 have passed away. A nurse shouted. I lifted my leg and left. Now only Tom and Jane remained. The siblings were too lazy to even hold a funeral, and instead paid extra for an expedited property inheritance. Tom naturally took over Song Enterprises, and Jane received shares. Both of them mocked me. Why are you still staying in our house? Tom scoffed. Mom and Dad are gone. No one's protecting you anymore, so scram. Song Enterprises belongs to us siblings, don't even think about coveting it. I chuckled. It's just an empty shell, I said. What's there to covet? Their faces changed. What nonsense are you talking? Jane snapped. Sour grapes. Are you crazy? I raised an eyebrow, and then Tom received a call from the company. Mr. Song, this is bad. A large group of police just arrived at the company. Tom's face turned pale, and he pushed Jane aside, then rushed out to his car and drove off. Jane stumbled from the push. But looking at Tom's retreating back, she smiled. Goodbye, big brother, she murmured. Jane's face contorted, unleashing her unease as anger onto me. She grabbed my arm, intending to hit me. But I was faster, grabbing her by the neck and lifting her up. Daisy Song, she gasped. Let me go. She turned red, her eyeballs slightly protruding. I looked at her coldly. Who allowed you to keep bouncing around in front of me? I asked. I exerted a little force and threw her away. Jane lay on the ground, gasping for air. Daisy Song, why are you so strong? She wheezed. Are you even human? I'm calling the police. I'm calling the police. I walked step by step towards her. Calling the police? I said. Don't rush. The police will be contacting you soon. Just as I finished speaking, Jane's phone rang. Hello, is this Ms. Jane Song? The caller asked. Your brother, Tom, was in a car accident and was just sent to the hospital. Jane's hand went limp, and her phone clattered to the ground. She stared at me blankly. How did you know? She whispered. Tom's heart was severely damaged, just as I had predicted. However, this time there was no heart donation for him. He could only have an artificial heart implanted. But because his brain also suffered severe damage, he became an imbecile after the surgery. Song Enterprises then completely fell into Jane's hands. Unfortunately, the company went bankrupt due to illegal operations. Not only did she have no savings, but Jane also ended up with a mountain of debt. She was on the verge of a breakdown. No, I don't want it. Give it to Daisy Song. I don't want any of this. The company is yours, all yours. She screamed. I smiled. How could I, an adopted daughter, be worthy of inheriting your family's assets? Ultimately, the millions in debt fell onto Jane. Unable to repay her debts, she was evicted from her home by creditors. To make matters worse, she had already destroyed all her valuable clothes and jewelry. She had no way out. The remaining creditors, unable to collect their money, sold Jane to a venue to entertain guests. She would never get out. But my good karma still wasn't full. Another winter, I once again took on the appearance of a 7-year-old girl, squatting in the heavy snow. Ma'am, I said, I'm so hungry. The end.